Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Dynamically Speaking podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Emme Reichert, the marketing manager at Axiomatics. And here I have with me our CTO, David Brossard. Hey, David, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well. And how are you doing?
Good.
All right, Emme, how about we talk a little bit about authorization? Because that's our favorite thing to do, right?
I'll say authorization is life.
Let's talk about Gartner, both Grapevine, London, and the future of authorization, shall we?
Yep, let's get into it.
Let's dive right in.
Back in December, which seems like a lifetime ago, we met up for the Gartner IAM Summit in Dallas, Texas. Now we're looking forward to the Gartner IAM Summit over in London. And when looking at the agendas in the conference navigator, a lot of the sessions look to be the same. What are some of the sessions what happened over in Dallas that you think? What are some of your insights for them?
Sure. So first of all, it was an exciting event. I think they're getting, for the world of authorization, they're getting more and more exciting as we go. A whole lot more focus on all forms of access control, be it policy-driven or any other means of authorization. But also some intro material, right? So, Emme, one of the sessions that you and I attended that I think will get carried over to London that I recommend listeners attend is a session by Mehmet Yalaman, who's one of Gartner's newer authorization analysts. And he gave a great introduction to authorization architectures, to modernizing your applications, to decoupling that authorization logic from the application and why you should do that. And what's cool with that presentation, Emme, is that he actually touched on admin time authorization as well as runtime authorization. As you know, you and I are very biased towards the runtime model of things, but it is legitimate to talk about admin time authorization, meaning defining the user identities, defining the user roles, their groups, their entitlements at admin time when you create or update the user, as opposed to doing what we do, which is at access time, at session time, granting or denying the user access to whatever it is they're doing. So that was a really great starting session. For those people attending London, I recommend they go see Mehmet's presentation if he has one. I haven't checked the agenda yet, so I'm not too sure that he has one, but I wouldn't be too surprised if he did. He does?
Yep, it's on the agenda for that.
Awesome. And I think the main takeaway that Mehmet had was to create a playbook of standardized patterns, standardized authorization patterns that you want to apply to your apps. And when we say apps, of course, it's a broad term. It could be COTS, it could be SaaS, it could be APIs, and a very wide range of applications. And of course, depending on the type of application, you might have different types of patterns that you want to apply.
And then another session that was really cool was the guidance on policy-based authorization to enable zero trust, which was done by Aspen.
Yeah. So Espen, who in a past life was an Axiomatics customer, so he's been exposed to real world authorization experience, delivered a session more specifically on policy-based authorization. So it was a nice step from Mehmet's presentation that was broader, that touched on all ways of doing authorization to just policy-based authorization. And what Espen and I mean when we say is policy-based authorization is that whatever defines the authorization is actually a policy language, of which there's many to choose from. The stalwart legacy language is XACML, XACML, founded back in 2001, but newer languages include Open Policy Agents Rego, include the abbreviated language for authorization Alpha, include some vendor-specific ones as well that exist, OSO, Cerbos, or other examples of authorization languages. But the point is, in Espen's presentation, he shows how different languages have different pros and cons, which language suits which use case better. Open Policy Agent is great for infrastructure. Alpha is great for general purpose authorization. And so he goes down, language by language and looks at them and kind of explains to the attendees which ones they should pick for which use cases. But also, he touches on the fact that with a policy language, you get great visibility, great auditability, great editability as well. It's easier to write a policy than it is to set up a graph or set up access control lists. And it's easier to understand what they do. There's a better correlation, no matter the language, there's a better correlation between the plain old English requirements and the actual authorization language. So that was a great session, again, that they delivered. I think, unfortunately, Espen is leaving Gartner. I'm sad to see him go. So I don't think he'll be at Gartner IAM, but if he's lurking around in the corners, I'd be more than happy to go and say hi.
Another really good presentation was the IAM disruptors we don't talk about, which was presented by Eric.
Yes. Eric has a strong focus on the developer experience, which I think is fundamental. I think we need to serve both the business analyst, application owner, product manager community, but also the developer, because at the end of the day, it is the developer implementing authorization in their apps and APIs. And if you don't give them a good experience, they're not going to want to implement the authorization the right way. Yesterday, sort of switching gears for a second, yesterday I had to set up a password for an account online, and the experience was brilliant. I went to their portal, it was a consumer portal, and I didn't have an account yet, so I clicked on the reset button, and that took me to an email that took me back to their website. Google Chrome kicked in. I use Chrome, don't judge me. It offered to create a password for me all transparently. I didn't have to worry about how complex or easy or whatever it is. It did it for me, click, click, click. And when I was done setting the password, it took me back to where I began. So as a consumer, the experience was great. As a developer, you want something similar. You don't want to have to worry about, oh, did I implement the right password policy? Is it going to be secure enough? Am I storing the password securely? The same thing here applies for authorization. And Eric's idea of CDSec, centralized with decentralized security, is a great way to tackle not just authorization, right? Other aspects of security, but in our case, authorization, because it essentially means that we, the vendors and the open source frameworks, we have to provide developers with tooling that they can use time and time again in a consistent, coherent fashion to achieve centralized authorization from a management standpoint across the entire enterprise, to gain better security, to gain better visibility, to gain better auditability. Have you seen the term CDSec apart from Eric's presentation? Is that a term you see popping up on your radar?
Well, we've talked about centralized and decentralized authorization a lot, so I'm familiar with that aspect of it, and I know we have some blogs on it, and that's a topic that, we should be doing some more on.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know it also ties into the reducing technical IAM debt session that was put on about that's one of the key points on there.
And speaking of technical debt, one aspect that we worry about is the idea of joiner, mover, leaver. The lifetime or the lifespan of an employee within a company, and the fact that as you're born within that company, you're given entitlements, and then as you evolve, as your career evolves, you get more entitlements. But oftentimes, we forget to remove the entitlements that you had in a previous role. That's the joiner, mover, leaver conundrum, if you will. And there are historical ways of tackling this, through governance tooling, through a better identity management tooling. But the truth is, we're always scared we're going to break a user's profile if we remove things from them. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? So if a user has changed from the role of manager to the role of salesperson, and they used to have access to the enterprise GitHub repository, they're doing their job as a sales manager. It doesn't hurt that they have access, does it? If I remove, for all I know, they're going to lose the ability to close deals, and then they're going to lose millions of dollars worth of business. So I'm not going to touch their entitlements. That's the wrong thinking, though. Because now that salesperson, their account might get hacked, or they might become a rogue employee, and they might actually abuse entitlements that they had before and do things they should not be able to do in the first place. So JML is really important that we tackle it right. The way to tackle it right, of course, is to minimize the number of entitlements we use, and then rely on policy instead, and then rely on key attributes like the department the user is in, the role, the business role the user is in, not the artificial roles that we've had to create. And be able to govern all this. If you have fewer entitlements, fewer artificial roles to govern, the people governing those attributes, the manager's manager, will do a better job of keeping the data clean and keeping the entitlements clean. So that's a really important thing. And I think, you're going to fill in the blank for me here, but I believe one of our colleagues, Matt, has been working quite a bit on that topic.
Yeah, he has been doing a lot on that topic, as that's a key thing that we all picked up at Gartner. And we've had a webinar that was really well done with him and Kyle. And they covered all different stages. They went into the common use cases for how to solve it. They showed demos, which was really well done. And we're going to expand on that with some blogs and stuff moving forward to keep highlighting that and how it can be solved with ABAC.
Great. ABAC being, for those listeners who are new, attribute-based access control. It is not a new ice cream flavor. What about AI, Emmy? Did you, and I know it's a bit of a buzzword, but it is a bit of a concern. This morning, I was lurking on LinkedIn and I saw one of my friends post about RAG and controlling access to RAG. Is that something you saw at Gartner? Is that something we need to start worrying about or addressing?
Yeah, so that's becoming a bigger topic that we're seeing in the industry, and that was covered in Homan's session for Gartner at Gartner for Gen AI. But yeah, and there's been a fair bit of progress on our end, and I know we're doing some stuff with RIG as well.
Yes, absolutely. It's important for us to understand where the risk is. So let's take a step back. When I think of AI, I think of two things: how AI can help authorization and how authorization can help AI. So the first bucket is really easy. How AI can help authorization? Well, that's simple. It's just like how AI can help development, especially in a policy as code approach. You can use AI. I've been using Microsoft Copilot for 6 months now, and it's writing the policies for me. It's amazing. And I haven't even had to train Copilot. It just knew the syntax because we use a public standard. So I just said, hey, Copilot, create a policy about, join remove reliever or export control or healthcare. And bam, it did it. And of course, it needs a bit of tweaking here and there, but it also learns from what you have in your IDE, right? So if you have already defined attributes or common blocks in your IDE and VS Code, then Copilot is going to use that to create better policies still. So that's the first part, AI helping authorization. But the second point, which is even more important, and that's the one that you were mentioning, Emme, is how we can use AI to control. We can use authorization. To control access to AI and RAG. Meaning, the main concern here is when your enterprise starts using AI to help you write email or make decisions, business decisions, or develop a new app, what underlying knowledge can they use? And more specifically, what underlying knowledge can the AI use on behalf of the user using AI? If it's the CEO of the company using the AI agent, then perhaps they can use all of the financial information of the company. But if it's just a junior developer who's just joined out of college using AI, maybe you don't want that developer to use all of the company's knowledge because, of course, there could be leakages. So the challenge is very similar to data access control in a way. You want to make sure that you put constraints on what the RAG can use in terms of underlying data so that it produces a response that is contextual and I want to say entitled in a way, right? That it only uses knowledge that the end user was supposed to use in the first place. And that's going to create some challenges, by the way. If you were an analyst and you're trying to figure out the average salary of all the employees in a company, but there's an authorization policy that says you cannot see the salaries of your management layer, then you're going to get a skewed view because now the average is going to be the average of people at your level or below you, not the average of all the employees. But I think we have to know these limitations and use the results knowing those limitations. Our co-founder, Babak, has been working a little bit on using authorization, applying it to RAG, and I'm looking forward to 2025 and all the other cool things he's going to come up with. If you have any questions, come see us at Gartner IAM in London. We'd be happy to talk more about AI, or we'll let Copilot have the conversation with you.
And I know that's another session that will also be in London, so that will be exciting to see again.
And the name of the session, by the way, that Homan had in Grapevine was Technical Insights, Generative AI, and IAM. It's a great session that if you were in Grapevine, you can download the slides. If you are going to be in London, I'm sure there will be a similar session coming up.
Then you guys also had a session for your Austen working group.
Yes. So one of the closing sessions, I think it was was it a Wednesday?
Yeah, it was on the last day in the last hour.
Yep. The darkest hour in a dark room far, far away. Homan from Gartner, Omri Gizit from Acerto, and myself spoke about OpenID Auth. So OpenID is one of the main standards bodies in the IAM space. OpenID are the creators of OpenID Connect. As an example, they are the home of shared signals, the home of verifiable credentials, and the home, of course, of Auth, the latest authorization standard that we've been working on. Omri, Jerry Gable from Strata, and I are the chairs of that standard. And our goal with Auth is to make to get to the point of what we call the OAuth of authorization. We want to make Auth the OAuth of authorization. What we mean by that is, 15 years ago, if you bought a product, if you bought a SaaS, if you bought a COTS, you didn't really care or know how that app would do authentication. You would just accept their user management solution. Today, though, if you buy a SaaS or COTS, you demand federation. You demand there be at least SAML and very hopefully OAuth and OpenID Connect so that you can integrate your identity management tooling, an Azure, an Entra, a Ping with your SaaS product. Well, we want the same thing to be true for authorization. Why should you have to implement authorization in that particular app in their own way, instead of having a policy or a graph define that authorization consistently, coherently in that app, but also in all the other apps you have? So making it easier to manage, easier to audit, easier to understand, and avoiding all those silos and all those gaps in between those silos that lead to either over-entitled users or just misconfigured users. So that's a part of Auth. In the session, it was a general session about what it is, where we stand. We currently have a draft standard of the PEP PDP interaction. So PEP and PDP are terms that come from the NIST ABAC architecture. PEP is the policy enforcement point, the piece that protects your application. PDP is the brains, if you will, the thing that chews up the policy and produces a decision. The PDP is what the authorization vendors typically sell. So Axiomatics, of course, we have a PDP that we sell. And then the PEP could be API gateway, could be an IDP, it could be many, many, many different things, right? So we talked about standardizing that PEP PDP flow. We have a draft standard. We have a roadmap for 2025. That roadmap targets June 2025 for the first official release of the final standard, if you will. In the meantime, we're working on other profiles and specs, a batch request response process. So the way to send multiple questions in one go and get multiple answers instead of just having to send them one by one. We're looking at a search API. The search API is an API that instead of saying, hey, can Alice view document 1, you can literally say, hey, tell me which documents can Alice view? And then you get the list of documents back, doc 1, doc 2, doc 3, right? We're also looking at a partial evaluation API, very similar to search, except that instead of getting the actual data back, you get the conditions. So instead of getting doc 1, doc 2, doc 3 back, you're going to get back documents in the sales department that are in draft mode. And then you can take that result and go query an underlying database. So that's partial evaluation for you. It was also a stepping stone for Gartner IAM London 2024 because, much like Shared Signals did a full-blown interop at Gartner in Grapevine, we, the OpenID Auth group, are doing a full-blown interop at Gartner London in a couple of months. We're inviting everyone to come and join. Not only as attendees, but also as participants. In the past interops, we had 15 different authorization vendors. Now we're reaching out to API gateways, to IDPs. We want you to participate. We want you to implement the Auth request response interface to make it become a true reality, to make it adopted by the broader range of applications, not just authorization services.
And if anyone wants to come in and join on that in London, that will be on Tuesday, March 25th at 11:15 a.m.
Cool. Thanks. And then we'll have multiple other interop sessions, I think, throughout the 2 days. There'll be a dedicated room for people to drop in and out of the interop sessions.
So just starting to fill out the agenda more. So hopefully more stuff gets posted. And I know we have a session too that will be coming out on the agenda
shortly.
Yes.
I think, is this your subtle way of telling me I'm not done with the slides and I have to put the slides together before the deadline?
Yes, that's due Thursday.
Okie doke, keeping track of that.
So in that session, what can people expect? What on earth are you going to be talking about?
Well, AI, actually. Not that I'm necessarily all focused on AI. I think it's a great technology, of course. I think it's going to change our lives in the future. But here and there, I just want to talk about my experience using specifically Microsoft Copilot and how it's helped me build apps more quickly, embedding authorization or including authorization in the process. And to me, what it means is that I can spend more time building the app than I spend time on building the security of the app because it's already taken care of for me. So I can focus on developing great customer experiences if I'm in a consumer-facing scenario, or great employee experiences if I'm in an enterprise scenario. That's what matters. At the end of the day, I want that the path of least resistance be the most secure one, that applies to authentication, applies to authorization, and that customers just do, and when I say customers in the broad sense, employees, customers, consumers, do the right thing, not because they want to do the right thing, but because it's just the simplest thing to do, the most delightful thing to do. So that's what I'll be talking about in that session, which I think is on the 25th.
Yep, 25th at 12:45 p.m.
Ooh, lunch korba.
Let's say get some food, watch David talk. It's one of his favorite things to do. We're going to be staying in London an extra day on the 26th, and we have something very special going on. Do you want to tell me more about what we're doing?
Yes, absolutely. So one of our sibling companies, and I say that because they're also a Swedish company. We've done a lot of work with them over the years. They're a great bunch of people. We really like them. So that sibling company from another mother, I guess you could say, Curity, is joining forces with us, Axiomatics, to have a customer-focused event on Wednesday afternoon in a brewery, if I'm not mistaken, or in a brew pub, which is a very London thing to do, I guess. And we'll be talking about securing your APIs to build better customer experiences with a slight focus on financial grade APIs, but not only financial industry, of course. And attendees will be able to learn about the proper way to do authentication and authorization from an IDP standpoint, from an OAuth standpoint, for those of you who want to get technical. And then we'll talk about fine grained access control with Axiomatics, of course. And that term, it builds on top of an architecture that Curity, Jacob, the CTO at Curity, put together called the Neo Security Architecture, where the main goal of that architecture is to separate concerns. So you have a dedicated authorization piece, a dedicated identity piece, a dedicated enforcement or API gateway piece. And when you do that, when you have best in class in each one of those categories, you get a very high quality architecture that can scale up to the different types of APIs that you want to build. So that's what we'll do.
That's awesome. I'm very much looking forward to that. It will be a great time. And if you guys want to RSVP, as space is limited, we have the registration on our website, and we'll put the link in the podcast information.
Yeah, should be a fun event. It'll be followed by a happy hour for people to meet other attendees and discuss their different implementation strategies and just have a chat with us. Happy to be there.
Yeah, it's going to be a great time. Awesome. Thanks so much, David, for talking with you. Is there anything else you would like to say before we let all of our listeners go?
I'm just super excited to see the amount of progress that we've done in the world of authorization over the past 18 months. I'm excited beyond what you can imagine to go back to London. I have not been there since 2019. I love London. It's a great city. Look forward to hopping on the tube and going to the conference venue with you, Emme. It's going to be great. It's going to be a fun time.
Yeah. It's going to be awesome. Awesome. Thanks so much, everyone, for listening. And we'll catch you on the next episode.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Dynamically Speaking. Stay tuned for our next one. And in the meantime, check the show notes and connect with us on LinkedIn and YouTube. And visit us at axiomatics.com to learn more about our authorization solution.